Okay, so we might as well get started. I was expecting it could be 10 or 100, but obviously with the rain, people are staying at home in bed. So thank you for coming. Today we're just going to go through what visas and immigration are, because they're different and the terms are used interchangeably when they're two different things. And then we'll do a question and answer session at the end. So just to be clear, this is for anybody who's not EU. So is there anybody EU who's here today? Okay, because that's good, because it'll only be confusing to anybody who is EU or has an EU passport. Okay, so my name is Natalie, and I'm part of the student support team in the international office, and I work alongside my boss Suzanne. So the two of us support 4,000 international students, and our main remit really is kind of welfare, visa, immigration, health insurance, working permissions and things like that. We also ran all the orientations, so you might have seen one of us there at orientation or at some of the welcome events. So we'll just start off with, well, who are our international students, because there are lots of different cohorts. So there are 24,000 students in UCC, and 4,000 of those are international. And we break them into two different groups. So there are visiting and there are full degree. So visiting would be here for a semester or for 1 year. They're both EU and non-EU. And then full degree are here for a full undergrad or for a full postgrad, but they are both non-EU groups. Okay? So today we're just going to cover what is a visa, what is immigration, what are your obligations. We're going to go through some frequently asked questions, so some FAQs, and then we'll have space for questions and answers at the end, because this is the most complicated topic you will probably face as an international student. Okay, so the first thing is, what is a visa? So an Irish visa is basically a document permitting you to travel to a point of entry into Ireland. So it doesn't grant you automatic access just because you have a visa. You can be refused at the border, okay? It's not very common, but it does happen. The other thing to note is that there are different visa types. So you have a single entry or a multiple entry. So if you're visa requiring, we always recommend you get a multiple entry, because the immigration process is very slow. And if you need to leave between now and getting your IRP card, basically you can't unless you have a multiple entry visa. So now there are some non-EU students that need a visa, and then there are some who do not. So obviously you're already here, so you know which category you're in. But if you do need to check, the link is there for the Irish immigration website, okay? And the other thing that we have to point out is that we can't assist you with your visa application. We get a lot of questions: can you expedite my visa? You know, I'm going to start the semester late. We can't get involved. There are too many embassies, too many different processes for the different passports. It's not our remit, okay? So in terms of the visa categories into Ireland, so obviously there are the tourist and visitor visas, so you're here for less than 90 days, so you're just coming on your holidays. You are here as a student visa, so you're on your stamp 2. And then there are the third group, which are the workers, okay? Then there are subcategories for each of those visa stamps, and the most important thing to note is that there are different conditions attached to each stamp. And it's your responsibility to know, well, what stamp am I? What are the conditions attached to that? And make sure you comply with them, okay? So that's the visa part. That, like I said, is permission to fly to a point of entry in Ireland. Then immigration is a different process. So this is where you need to get your permission to actually be here, whether it be to work, to study, or just to reside, okay? So all international students who are here for longer than 90 days must register with immigration if you have a non-EU passport. Now, if you came into the country, for example, on a non-EU passport, but you have an EU passport or UK passport, you can switch statuses. Is anybody in that group?
Yeah.
Okay, so what passport did you come in on?
Came on American.
Okay, and...
Well, the Irish will take a year because of the foreign registry, and
Okay.
the English one will be 5-6 weeks.
Okay, so I don't know what happens there, because so you're not in possession of your UK passport just yet. Okay, We might come back to it at the end, because usually somebody who has the status already will just go down to immigration, present both passports, and then they'll switch your status over. But if it's in progress, I'm not sure what the process is, so we can talk about that later, okay? Is there anybody else in that situation? You're all non-EU? Okay. So the deadline by which you must register or request an appointment is on your landing stamp. So this is basically the stamp that when you came in, immigration stamped your passport and it'll give you a date. So that's a deadline. It's not anything else other than a deadline. Now, a lot of people ask, well, what happens if my landing stamp expires and you don't have your immigration card yet? Nothing happens because there's nothing you can do. I think right now there's an 11-week backlog. They're just completely overwhelmed. So the only thing it means is that you can't enter and exit the country unless you have a multiple entry visa. So, for example, on your US passport, you can't go out of the country and back in until you have your IRP card. You could be refused entry and returned to the States. Okay, so that's important. So this is what the landing stamp looks like. Like I said, it's a deadline to register with immigration, and it can range from 30 to 90 days. So that date is not negotiable. It's basically up to the immigration officer. They try to give you more time because they're aware of the fact there's a massive backlog. So the landing stamp, like I said, is not permission to enter and exit the country at will. So some, like for example, students who are non-visa requiring think, oh, I have 90 days on this landing stamp so I can go in and out of the country. It's not so. It's a deadline. So if you decide to go out of the country, whether it be over the border to the UK, to Belfast, for example, you could be detained and returned, or returned straight away to the States. Usually it's just returned back to Ireland. So that's really important to note, okay? The other thing, as I said, is that it is a temporary permission to reside until you get your IRP card. It's not permission to travel. So nothing is going to happen. You're still allowed to study. You're just in the process, you're in the system waiting for an appointment. Okay, so in terms of what you need to do, you need to, have you all emailed for an appointment? Have you emailed immigration yet for an appointment? Okay.
We're told not to, yes.
By?
So we have all the documents, all the insurance, everything else in order.
Okay.
We were told to make sure you have everything on the list
Yeah.
before you get
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's no point in emailing yet until you have everything, because they are trying to expedite the process, and you could get an early appointment and then you don't have what you need, and then you're just going to annoy them. So what you need are basically a few things. So you need your completed hard copy. So it has to be a hard copy of the IRP form, and you can get that on our website. Then you need your passport, your visa if applicable. You need proof that you're a student, so your UCC student identity card, so you do need that. Proof of private medical insurance, a €300 processing fee, proof of address, and if you are not visa requiring, so for example you guys, you will need to show that you have enough financial access to financials to be here. Okay, so this is all on our website as well, just to say. Okay, so this is what the form looks like. There are two forms, one for renewal, one for first time registration. So the blue one is for the first time registration, which will be most of you, okay? This is the QR code for where you can get it. But again, it's very easy. You just Google UCC IRP form and it'll bring the form up for you. Now you need to print this when you go to immigration. If you go down with all your documents minus this form, they'll turn you away. You go to the bottom of the list, the queuing list. You can't get it from us and you can't get it from them. So you must just have it all in order, okay? So just to go through the form, this is what the actual form looks like. So the first half is pretty basic. It's your surname, your first name, middle name. So the sex is only male or female, so we don't have any other options for that. And the name must be what's on your passport, because we've lots of students transitioning and they go by different names. It has to be what's on your passport, okay? So date of birth, nationality, country of birth, date of arrival, your port of arrival is the airport or if you came in through the ferry, and then your current Irish address. Then the next part of the form is your contact number, your occupation is student, your PPS number is a tax number, so you're not going to have that unless you are renewing. So you can ignore that, and then you put down your marital status, so whatever your status is. And then on the flip side of the form, we created a checklist because this causes problems every year. And to be fair, the Irish immigration website is very, very complicated to navigate. So the first thing you need is, when you go down, obviously your form, and you need evidence that you have an appointment. So you need to show on your phone or print out your appointment email. So again, like I said, the completed form, you bring your passport, your visa will be in the form if you are visa requiring. You need your student card. So if you've no student card, do not go down. An offer letter won't work. And proof of private medical insurance. Okay. Now, the medical insurance needs to be in your name, not a parent's name, and it must be from the very date you arrive on Irish soil. Okay. So that's important, because if something happens between now and registering, the Irish state doesn't want to take responsibility for, repatriation or anything like that. I think it costs about €30,000 to repatriate either a body or someone who's incapacitated. So they're trying to avoid that. So if it's not in date, from the date you arrive, they'll reject you, send you away, and then you go to the bottom of the list again. So it's important you have everything you need from the get-go, okay? Now, so a bit more on private medical insurance. So I did a workshop. It went on for about an hour, and it was with two providers, so Study and Protect and VHI. There are lots of providers out there, but we recommend those two because they're immigration compliant. Now, the difference between needing an Irish policy and not is whether you're here for less than a year or more than a year. So is there anybody here for more than 12 months? Okay, so all of you, your situation is slightly different now, but anybody here for longer than 12 months has to have an Irish policy, okay? Immigration will not take a foreign policy. The reason behind it is that there has been a recent change in legislation which basically states that you are ordinarily resident. It's a bit confusing to explain, but the bottom line is you need an Irish policy. Okay, so if you got a visa based on an Indian policy, an American policy, that's fine, but you have to have an Irish policy now. Okay, are there any questions on that? Because this is now being enforced. So
what's the definition? He's only here, he's here for 8 months or 9 months, or he goes back to his part of the States or goes traveling.
How long is his course?
It's a 4-year course.
He's here full time.
So you need to maintain the insurance throughout those 4 years.
So you don't need to have a 4-year policy, but what they're saying is if your course is longer than 12 months, it's a good question, because most students, they go home, they go working, they go travelling, it doesn't matter. You are considered ordinarily resident because your course is longer than 1 year. So you have to get an Irish policy, and I get on that sooner rather than later, okay? So like I said, have a look at the workshop because there's a lot to it. There are different options, but you're looking at about €420 for an Irish policy per year. If you are here for less than a year, you can also get an Irish policy. It's only going to cost you $160, or you can have your policy from home. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Did anybody have any questions? There are no stupid questions. Yeah. VHI? Yeah, it's an Irish, exactly. So VHI and Study and Protect are kind of our go-to because we know they're immigration compliant. And there are different rules for health insurance, which is why we did a separate workshop. Like you have to have full hospital cover, repatriation needs to be included, and different kind of like €25,000 in accident and emergency cover. There are different things that are needed, so I would recommend looking at that workshop. It's a standalone kind of piece of work to help you understand it, and it gives you contact details for VHI and Study and Protect as well. Okay, any other questions on health insurance? Yeah.
I bought my health insurance before coming to Ireland. Is that okay?
How long are you here for? How long is your course?
4 years.
Okay, so you'll need an Irish policy. Most students, they get a policy from home. It's cheaper, they're under their parents, but it's not immigration compliant.
I think the policy I bought was Irish.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, sorry, I should have clarified that. Is it VHI or Study and Protect?
I think they make VHI.
Okay. Well, it can be anybody, but those are the two. Like, there's Leia as well. We don't work with them, so I don't know how comprehensive the package is and if it's immigration compliant. So that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay. So, like I said, the policy must begin from the date you arrive. Okay. Now, so the rest of the form, then you need your immigration fee, which is €300. This is not negotiable. So some students do try to go in and say, well, I'm only here for 3 months. Why do I have to pay it? They have a point, but this is the law. I really wouldn't go in arguing with immigration. It's not a good idea. And you can only pay by 2 options. So bank gyro, which I would advise against. So that's where you go down, submit your documents, they give you bank details, you go back to the bank, you transfer the money, you go back to immigration. It's just too lengthy. So pay with a Visa debit, a credit, a laser, MasterCard. They don't take some cards like Forex, I think is quite popular in India, Pakistan. They don't take cards like that. So it's mainly the main ones, Visa, laser, credit card. Okay. And then the final thing you need is proof. Penultimate thing you need is proof of address. So you need to show that you are resident here. So it needs to be the full address. So this is complicated if you're staying in a room in a house and the landlord has given you no lease agreement and all the bills are in his name. So is there anybody in that kind of situation where it's hard to get a lease or a document with their name on it? Are you all staying in student complexes? Okay, so you just go to reception, so whether it be the Crow's Nest or Nido, and you say, I need an immigration letter for proof of address. So it has to be the full name and full address, so like apartment number, floor number. They will reject you if it just says John O'Brien is in the Crow's Nest. They'll send you away. It has to be a detailed letter. And like I said, if you can't get a lease agreement or a utility bill, you're going to have to open an Irish bank account, which is another process. So there's nobody kind of in that situation. You're all okay with proof of address. Okay, good, because letter of attendance does not work. Okay, it'll work to open a bank account, but it's not official enough to open to get residency. Okay. So then the final piece of what you need is if you are non-visa requiring, okay, you need to show I can afford to be here and I'm not going to be a burden on the state. So the figures we're not sure about because we can't get clarity. So our interpretation is that you need 4,500 if you're here for more than 6 months, okay? Otherwise you need 700 per month of stay. So if you're here for 6 months, you need either 4,500 or 700 multiplied by that, okay? Which is the 4,500 anyway, or 4,200. So the way to show that is that you can get an Irish bank account. So you'll need a full statement and then a mini statement from the day. The other way is proof from a foreign bank account. Again, this has to be in your name, and you must have a card as well to go with the account to show you have access to the money. So with the foreign bank account, you need 2 statements. So they need a statement from the past month and a statement from the past 6 months. So it's just to show a history of banking. And then you can also show proof from a financial services company. Nobody really uses that. Proof via a prepaid credit or debit card. And then if you're lucky enough to be sponsored, or if you're a scholarship student, you can get the scholarship letter, which would ideally say, you know, John O'Brien is completely covered for all fees, all expenses, all living costs. So are there any questions about that? Because that's another one people get stuck on.
So with the funds, for argument's sake, let's say it takes 12 weeks to get the immigration appointment.
Yeah.
Do we need to put that in there now, or do we put it in 2 weeks before the appointment?
I don't know the answer to that. I can't get clarity on it from them. I would say that if you can show that you've had the 4,500 from the minute you got here, because obviously you're going to be eating into that money, so it's a really good question. But I would say you need to show, look, I had 4,500 when I got here. Now it's 2 months later, so I have whatever the equivalent is of the 700 that, you know, for the rest of the months. Yeah, so you definitely need to show I had 4,500, I had to spend it on rent, and now I still have I have 700 per month of stay left. I've never heard of someone being rejected based on that, and there is a backlog. So, are there any other questions on that? No? Okay, questions might come as we go anyway. Okay, so keep an eye on those figures on the website because they might change, they might go up again because this is to reflect the cost of living. And the other thing we're not sure about either is when you renew. So even for visa requiring students, you might need to show evidence of finances at renewal. So it's not in place right now, but we believe it'll come in. So like I said, we've chased, yeah.
When it comes to the bank account,
Yeah.
getting an Irish bank account,
Yeah.
specifically with that money in or to have that money.
Yeah.
So we ran into an issue where, it's from the U.S. with him in his passport. They're saying that he needs a visa to open the checking account.
What's a checking account? Is that a current account?
Just a
Yeah, bank account, yeah.
basic bank account.
That you need a visa?
Yeah, so his passport has had a regular stamp, and they said you need the 90-day visa stamp.
They mean the landing stamp?
But we're a non-visa required
Okay, I think the person's confused. Which bank is it?
AIB. And
Okay.
And then she's like, she said I've been there 25 years.
I had the same issue when I tried to set it up. They asked for my visa. I'm like, I don't have that. I don't know what that means. But apparently, if you just show them like your 90-day landing stamp instead of the visa, then it worked for me. I also did it with AIB.
What is the 90-day landing?
It's on the passport.
It should be in your passport.
We did that and we didn't get a stamp.
Have you got your
We
passport?
said he's a student at UCC, and he said, oh, wonderful for you. It's just stamped it regular.
Great. Okay. yeah. Okay. So, to be honest, we don't work with AIB, but if you can maybe get like a contact detail, like an email address, or go to the bank and ring them and then ring me and I'll explain, look, this person has a US passport, they don't need a visa, because obviously they're confused. And this is why we do this, because everybody's confused about what's needed. The alternative is go to Bank of Ireland, who we work with, we partner with, you'll have no issues. They're on campus. Yeah, they're on campus. The manager is called Aileen. But if you just go and say, look, I'm a UCC student, US passport, I've never heard of that now, to be honest, even for visa requiring students. So I think they're confused. So go to Bank of Ireland. Anything else? No? Okay. Okay, so financial evidence. So like I said, the amounts have changed and they may change again. So you'll have to keep an eye on the website, the Irish immigration website. But for now, it is the $700 per month of stay or $4,500 if you're here for more than 6 months. And you don't need to show that if you're visa requiring. And for renewals, like I said, scholarship students definitely need to show at renewal that they still have that funding in place. And for non-visa requiring students, I definitely think that it's going to come in. Nobody's very clear or willing to kind of put in writing that yes, this is coming in, but we expect it will. The reason being, a lot of students find themselves in financial difficulties, and it's landing on the Irish state to subsidise them, which is not our job. Okay, so that's point 9. So banking, in terms of banking, it's pretty straightforward, but we did another workshop as well, with kind of going through all the scenarios. So that's the workshop I'd recommend you have a look at. So we spent about an hour and a half with Bank of Ireland, with the 2 bank managers, and they just went through all the questions you might have. So please watch the recording. And that link is not much good to you there, obviously, but I'll show you where all of these recordings are later. And like I said, we only work with Bank of Ireland, but there's TSB, there's EBS, there's AIB, but we just don't know how they operate. We don't have any contacts or anything for them. To open an account, it's pretty straightforward. You just have to click on the QR code there. I'll come back to it. And it'll just explain what you do. And usually you can either just click a link on our website, you text a number, or you just go into the bank and say, look, I need a bank account, a student account. Give them your passport just in case they ask you a stupid question about your visa status. And they will just tell you what you need. And it's usually things like proof of identity, so who you are, proof of address, back home and here, but it's more relevant to here if you're already here, so they'll need proof of address for Cork, proof of your student status, and then proof of how you're funding yourself. So it's pretty straightforward. So have a look there at our Student Info Hub. So UCC Student Info Hub has everything, okay? Okay, so you've got everything you need. Have it in a nice folder, in order. You just want to make their lives nice and easy, get in and get out. What do I do in order to get an appointment? So if you're living in the city centre, okay, you need to email them, and it's corkcity.immigration@garda.ie. Now, only email them when you're here and when you have an appointment. So I'm saying that because this is being recorded. So obviously you need to be resident first, and you need to include certain information, okay? So your full name as in your passport, date of birth, current address in Cork, IRP card will only be for those who are renewing, your telephone number, and you're going to put down first time registration, okay? You'll then get an automated email, so you need to get that automated email to know you've sent it to the right place. And like I said, that's out of date. It's an 11-week backlog, but they have hired more staff, so that will hopefully come down from 11 weeks, okay? Now, if you are not living in the city centre, so is there anybody who thinks that they're not living in the city centre? Because sometimes people don't know what's city centre and what's not. So like Middleton, Carrigaline, Bandon, Carrigtwohill, you're all city centre? Okay, perfect. So just for anybody who might ask, if you're not city centre, you go to your local Garda station, and that's the directory where you can find where your local Garda station is. And just quickly, that's the picture of Anglesey Street, which is the main Garda station in the city centre. So it's next to the fire station, just beyond the financial district. If you ask anybody where Anglesey Street is, they'll tell you, okay? Okay, so just a little bit about visas and travelling to other countries, because most students, if you're lucky enough to have the cash, you want to go exploring. The first thing I would say is, just because you did not need a visa to get into Ireland, do not assume you don't need a visa to get anywhere else. For example, now the UK, we've had US students detained at the border because they've decided, well, I'm not visa requiring, so I don't need anything. It's not true, especially since the UK have left the EU. So there are things you need. So you need to show that you are residing in the Republic. You need to show that you intend on coming back. So that would be your bus ticket, your plane ticket. You need to show proof of address in Cork, your student card. So you need to show your intention is to visit and to come back. So that's just one example. There are other countries where you may need other things. If you're visa requiring especially, you're more than likely going to need a visa for the other 26 EU states. So you need to look into this. It's very important. So if you're visa requiring, we recommend the Schengen. This allows you access to 26 countries, so not Ireland, unfortunately. And we can't help you with that because, again, there's too many nuances to your passport, your situation, to what each embassy needs. So you'll have to just look into that. So number one, get your immigration status here. And then number two, okay, think about where you want to go to and then see, what do I need? Because your immigration card only works for here. Okay, it doesn't automatically grant you access anywhere else. I don't think there's anything else I need to say. Especially, again, check out transit visas. If you're going through the UK, you might need a transit visa. So you need to check really everything. So what do I need? Do I need a visa? Do I need a transit visa? Okay, so that's before you even leave the airport. You need a transit visa sometimes. I don't think there's anything else really. Do you have any questions on that? Because most students want to travel. I suppose the only thing I would say again is that until you have your IRP card, I would not be chancing going out of the country. You may not get back in, and there's nothing we can do because you're breaching your immigration obligations. Okay, so you need your card, the physical card. Some students will say, I've had my appointment, I'm waiting, now I'm in the 2-week waiting period for my card. No, again, we'd recommend you don't travel. Okay. Okay, so word of warning, this is only for certain students who just break our hearts every single year. So immigration is a legal requirement, okay? It's not an option, so you do need to do this if you are non-EU. There's no way around it, okay? So if you have to miss a class, a lot of times your appointment will clash with something, you have to go. You don't want to be emailing them trying to reschedule. You go to the bottom of the list and then this process goes on for eternity, and you're annoying them as well because you're giving them extra work. So in terms of attitude, please be polite. We have had students go down and be kind of belligerent and argue about different things. It doesn't end well and it looks really bad for us. So just go down with everything you need, give them what they want and get out there, and then just go on your merry way and just, enjoy Ireland and study and travel. So please respect them, don't question their authority. Like I said, no arguing, negotiating about the €300 or when your immigration or when your travel insurance has to start. Just don't do any of that. They obviously hold the balance and they do the power balance, and they have the power to deport, and they have done. So check the checklist. So we created it for you specifically. So there's no other checklist in Ireland. So that's why if you go onto the Irish immigration website, you won't see this IRP form. It doesn't exist. So we put it together to make your lives easy. So just abide by that. It's locally agreed and sanctioned by immigration in Anglesey Street. Okay. The other thing is we don't check your documents. We just don't have time. There's too many students renewing, switching to graduate stamps. You have to do it yourself. So I'm saying all of these points because they all happen every year. Okay, here are my documents and off you go. No, I can't do that. You have to do it yourself. Okay, so it's your responsibility. Like I said, I would not be travelling without your IRP card. And the thought for the day, Ireland is more laid back. Obviously, the Gardaí are unarmed, but what happens, in your country if you don't abide by immigration? And the same will happen in Ireland. And like I said, we have had students deported if they're just breaching immigration, not bothering to register, travelling in and out. You'll just get deported, and then you get a black mark across all EU states. Okay, so after the end of all of that, you get this little IRP card. IRP stands for Irish Resident Permit. So like I said, this is your permission to be here and to reside and to study and to work in certain situations, okay? So just because you have this, it doesn't mean you can work. If you're here for less than a year, you can't work. So you'll be put on a stamp 2A, which is restrictive. If you're here for longer term, you can work, or if you're EU, you can work. Does that make sense? Because it is confusing. So let's just say you're a US student here for 1 term or for 1 year. You cannot work. On your IRP card, it will say stamp 2A. It's restricted, okay? What you want is the stamp 2, which means you're here for longer, and it means you can work. But there are more fun processes to navigate to do that. Okay, so the card is posted to you 2 weeks after your appointment with immigration. So just be careful that you don't change address in the meantime, but the card will go to that address. And obviously this is a very valuable card on the black market, given the situation with lots of asylum seekers and refugees like everywhere. It's very valuable. So if you lose this card or it's stolen, you must report it. They will issue you with the new one, and they'll charge you another €300 in most cases. So I would say I wouldn't carry it around with me. I would have a photograph of it or a photocopy and have it in my pocket, because the guards can stop you and say, I need to see, if you're causing trouble or involved in a scuffle or something, they could ask you, I need to see your IRP. So I probably wouldn't carry it in case it gets lost or stolen, but I would have evidence, here is my status. It's just a good idea as an international student to be kind of armed. Okay, so what else do I need to tell you? If you change address after you get the card, you also need to let them know where you are. So you'll have to pop down to immigration, just call in and say, look, I've changed address. It's very common. You give them the IRP card, you give them your passport, your old address, so your utility bill, bank statement, and proof of your new address as well. Okay, they'll need to see that. Okay, so those are some useful websites. Like I said, I'd probably stick to our student info hub, because we have kind of extrapolated the information and tried to make it as digestible as possible, because it is complicated. And like your situation, there's always people with different kind of circumstances and backgrounds, so it's never straightforward really. So the bottom one in black is our website, and it's always up to date. So we troll all of these websites and we make sure everything is accurate, the updates are all there. So please, don't rely on friends for information. They'll give you the wrong information, guaranteed. And then then it just gets more complicated. So come to the source. We work with Anglesey Street very closely and with the Department of Justice. So those are the websites. I feel like I went through it very fast, probably because the group is very small. So are there any questions at all? Do you want to go first? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll just go from front to back. Sorry.
So in the US, you need a social security number to work.
Say that again now.
In the US, you need a social security
Yeah.
number to get a job.
Exactly.
And it's a national insurance number. But
Yeah.
So at what point in the pantomime here do you actually do you get the visa first and then you get the card and then you get a tax ID number?
So it's a good question. So you need your status first. You need to regularize your status as a student. So you can't be doing anything else until you're officially a student. So then you have permission to work if you have the stamp 2A.
The visa says you that because he's got his student ID card now. Obviously.
That's fine, but it doesn't really mean anything. It just means that he's a student. So what he needs to do now is he needs to get permission to be here as a student. So he's been accepted, his grades are good, and his academic background is sufficient. But what he needs now is permission to reside. So that's his IRP, which is the immigration. And if you want to work, then the next step is you need to get a PPS number. So I'm just going to Google here if I can get out of this. No thanks. So it's just called a PPS number. It's a tax number. So basically, if you're resident in Ireland, it means that you have to be tax compliant. So, you can't really be doing any freelance work. The other thing as well is if you're working for a company remotely and they're not based in Ireland, you are still liable to pay tax. So you need this number. So personal public services number. So you could probably try to do the two in tandem, but there's a lot to navigate. But this is a separate process from UCC, so you just have to go onto this website here, Citizens Information, and look up PPS, and it'll say, how do I apply for PPS?
And also, clearly you don't need any of this for a bank account.
No, you don't need any. It's all you need is evidence that you are a resident here. You need to show who you are, so passport. You need to show evidence of your financial history because they need to abide by the European banking regulations. And they need evidence of how you're going to finance yourself, so pay wages, pay slips, things like that.
And then lastly, so the IRP card.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I have two more questions. The IRP card, is that essentially a visa? Once you have that card,
Yeah.
you can
Yes.
fly in and out of the EU.
Out of Ireland.
You can fly from Ireland to the EU, to the Schengen States.
No, you need to check what you need. Yeah, so it's a good question. So the IRP card is only valid for Ireland. So it gives you permission to be here, to study, possibly to work. If you decide to go out to Spain or France, you need to check, well, what do I need? Do I need a visa?
And then,
But it will allow you access back into Ireland. But whether you get out is the problem, and whether you get into the other country.
took me a while to get out of Ireland. And then the last question would be, if he's in the UK passport comes in,
Yeah.
sort of before his appointment date, because they told us at immigration that we have to go there do the registration process, pay the €300 or whatever, and then because he entered on his US passport, that his British passport comes in 4 or 5 weeks, can he
Yeah.
go down there and just change his status?
Now, usually what we've been told is if you come in, say by mistake, on a US passport and realise, God, I've got an EU or UK passport, we tell the students, just go down to immigration and just tell them, here is my UK or EU passport, can you switch my status? Then they go into the system and they change you from non-EU to EU. So you can either do that or you can just wait for an appointment. I'd probably pop down and just see if they'll see you. It depends on who you get.
Yeah.
Someone might be very nice and be like, yeah, no problem, and they'll edit the information. But I can't imagine why you'd need to register as a non-EU student. You should just be able to switch your status. It happens all the time to students, So I'd probably, as soon as you get your UK passport, go down to immigration, ask for somebody at the immigration desk, be prepared to wait, and just say, look, I came in on a US passport, but I actually have just received my UK passport, and let them give you the rest of the information.
And most of this would be null and void, I suppose.
You still need a PPS number, but the rest is null and void. So in order to work, you still need a PPS number. You have to be tax compliant. But it means lots of other things then as an EU, UK citizen. It means you've access to the HSC, which is like the NHS, but you'll have to look into that yourself because there are rules around how much tax you might have paid, or But usually there's a common travel area where there's agreements between the two governments. But you'll have to investigate that a bit further yourself. All right? Yeah.
Piggybacking on
Yeah.
the gentleman here's son.
So our son came in on a U.S. passport.
Yeah.
And
All
about,
landing stamp.
Right. Okay.
nevertheless, in about 2 weeks, he'll have his Irish passport.
Right. Okay.
So does he need to do any of this?
I would do the same thing. I would just, as soon as you get the Irish passport, I'd go down to immigration and say, look, send him down. Don't go down yourselves. Okay.
Anglesey
Anglesey
Street.
Street, yeah, exactly, and just say, look, here's my Irish passport. I did enter on a different one. Here's this. And they should say to you, okay, no problem, we'll update the system. Now, unless something has changed that I'm not aware of, but you can get in touch with us. But it should be pretty simple. You just switch status. None of this then matters other than the PPS. You need to be tax compliant.
So PPS is if he's getting a job here, hopefully he does.
Exactly. That's a whole different process. So you apply online, and we don't have anything to do with that because it's just a different system.
He should do that after he gets his passport.
I probably would. Yeah, I probably would. Just unless he really needs to work now, he could start this. But like, you're going to have to change all the information then because they need passport number, and then you'll be going back and re-entering it because it'll be different.
How long does that PPS take?
Sorry.
Do you know how long it takes to get
I don't know. Now is probably the worst time of year because we have thousands of students descending and all wanting to work. So I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a similar question. Is it, I don't know if you know, but is it a similar process if you get the residence card and all that, and then if, say, in a year, I end up getting a new passport, is it fairly...
I think it's the same situation. You'll go down and you'll say, look, I'm due to renew, but I have actually just got my EU passport. Now, it's a separate situation then in terms of fees. I think if you start out as a non-EU, then you have to continue paying those fees, I think. It's not really my area, but in terms of immigration, I would just go down and say, look, I've changed. But it has to be a passport. It can't be residency, because I've had students say, I'm resident in Belgium, but I have an Indian passport. I have a Belgian IRP. It doesn't matter. It has to be a passport, so you have to be kind of naturalised. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah, good. Anybody else? Anything? Because there's a lot to it. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I applied for my PPS number.
Yeah.
And it's been like about 10 days now.
Okay.
And while everything was good, I live in accommodation, so I forgot to write my room number.
Okay.
So my address is absolutely okay, And I wanted to go and change my address, add the value of the number over there so that, it comes to the right address and the right room.
Okay.
And I couldn't change it because the status on my website on my log ID was showing that my documentation is being reviewed by an officer. So I actually went yesterday to the office, official office, to inquire about it. They told me, they gave me 2 email addresses.
Okay.
They told me right back to them.
Okay.
So I kind of put in an inquiry to them.
Yeah.
And one response came back to me that please go back to the official office and put in your query. So it's been a vicious circle.
Yeah.
I'm just going back and forth. So, they say go onto the website and you can change it, but there's nothing to change up there.
Yeah. So I would go down again to the office with the email that says go back to the office and tell them this is what I've been told. I can't amend it online because it's in review. So can you help me? I really don't want my PPS card again, which is important. It's linked to you and your tax history. I don't want it going somewhere else. So it does happen. Sometimes you get bounced around. People make mistakes. So take that email down. So that'll be from somebody probably more senior. And just kind of ask them, can they just put a note on the account, or ask, can you go in and collect your PPS when it's ready, your card, So just go back down, I would say.
And the other thing was I've already applied for my visa too.
Your which?
For
IRP appointment?
IRP.
Yeah.
So I wrote back to them and there was no reply email to me saying that, please put in your details in one order, which I did, and I sent it back to them. And they said that
So I think, as far as I know, they're backlogged to the 12th of June, something like that. Maybe the 20th now. So they're completely backlogged, and they are trying to process the short stay students faster because they're the ones who are here for 3 months and they are really stuck because they can't travel. So they're trying to process them first. So all you have to do is wait. So once you got an automated email, you sent back what you were asked to do, then you just have to wait. So are you visa requiring?
Yeah.
Okay, did you get a multiple entry visa?
Right now, currently, I do have a monthly
Okay,
entry visa.
Good.
I'm a student visa.
good, but it's multiple entry.
Right.
Yeah, so you can come in and go out as you please because the IRP becomes your multiple entry when the multiple entry expires. So
I don't have an RMP. I've got an Indian visa.
yeah, but it's multiple entry.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So you can travel.
Yeah.
You can travel. So you just have to wait for your IRP appointment. There's nothing else you can do.
Okay, because
Yeah.
my entry visa is going to be expiring on January
Yeah.
next year. So I know I have like about 5 months. So this time I can go multiple times back
Yeah.
and forth, like if I want to.
Yeah, once it's multiple entry, that's important.
Yes, it is.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's
And,
it, yeah.
But right now, suppose in case of emergency, if
Yeah.
I have to fly out or something, and as the paperwork it's all out here, like it's being in process. Like how do we go about with that then?
Usually,
Suppose if I have to travel maybe next month or after that, maybe in November or something like that.
but you can because you have your multiple entry visa, which is valid until January 24. So the situation is more for someone who has, like for example, you guys from the US or Canada, so you've no IRP card and an emergency happens and you need to go home. In that situation, you'll have to get on to us or just go down to immigration and say, look, I have a funeral or I have something serious. You'll need evidence of it. And then if you can get something from them just to say, look, we'll make sure that you get back in without any hassle. But you see, what they're trying to avoid is people just going on their holidays to Paris and saying it's an emergency, because that happens. So if it's an emergency, it's slightly different in your case because you will need a visa to get back in. There's no way you won't get your IRP card by January 24, so it'll be fine. But you would have to come to us because you're in a more delicate situation, being visa requiring. There's no way you get back in without a valid multiple entry, single entry. You probably have to get a single entry, or with an IRP card. And it would be up to the discretion then of the immigration officer for non-visa requiring students to get back in. But I would not chance it. I would have an email or a letter from us just to say, look, it's an emergency. We've seen evidence of this. And we're requesting you permission to be re-entered. Does that make sense? But it rarely happens, to be honest. It can, but we haven't seen much of it, Yeah.
Does the school need a copy of the new passport? Because I know when he applied, he used the U.S. passport. Now does the school need a copy of that? Do we have to?
I don't
put that
know.
online or anything?
I would say maybe just email them and ask them. Get onto the department and ask them what do they need. It's kind of beyond what I know, so I don't know. But there's no harm in having it on file, Yeah. Are there any other questions? Yeah.
Might be pushing my luck here, but what do you know about switching to an Irish driver license?
I don't know anything about it. Sorry. I would say it should be pretty easy, to be honest. But again, I think there's a backlog. I remember renewing mine about 2 years ago, just as you were exiting the EU, and I remember there was like a flurry of British citizens trying to get their Irish passport switched over. So I'd say it's calmed down by now.
Driver license, though.
Sorry, driver's license and passport actually was the other thing,
Yeah.
I would just go online. I think it's the NDLS or something. So and there's a place in Cork, National Drivers. I think it's NDLS. Here we go, NDLS. And I'm sure there's probably a section that tells you what you need to do if you have an EU or UK driver's license. But again, it's kind of beyond my scope of knowledge, I'm afraid.
All right, nice.
Any other questions? No? Okay, so as I said, I'm going to record this and I'm going to put it on different places. So our Facebook group, our Instagram page, I'm going to put it on our student info hub. I'll just show you where that is. So UCC student info hub. So this is kind of the international office section of the website, and this is where all of the visa and immigration, PPS, the recordings. So here's a new section called video resources. So I'm going to update the last workshop I did because I didn't have the financial evidence, and all of the workshops are here. So it's really worth having a look. So for banking, for health insurance, have a look at this again if you have questions, because I'm sure questions will come to you, but hopefully you won't have any major problems. So there's nothing else in terms of, I can't help with timetables anyway, but do you know who to go to if you're stuck with different things like academic queries or timetables?
I
Yeah.
actually do have one question.
Yeah.
So, I was going through actually on your student ID card, and all the information there for you, the birth was wrong.
Okay.
And I emailed a number of people, and while they're referring to someone else,
I know.
to someone else, I haven't figured out who to talk to.
I would go to Exams and Records. I'm just thinking of where they are because a lot of the offices have moved to the hub. I think they're based in the hub. So when you come out of here and go up the steps, you've got the library on your right, and then you've got the quad in front of you. And if you go left, there's like that big kind of student building. It's called the student hub, and most of the admin offices are there. Go to reception and ask them, where are Exams and Records? And you'll need now evidence of your passport or something, and they should be able to update that pretty easily. But get it sorted now. I think everybody's behind on emails because we're just deluged. So I'm guilty of it as well. There's just too many questions, which is why we're running these workshops to try to have the resource there. Any other questions at all? Yeah.
Who would I go to if I wanted to change my program?
Okay, I would go to your current coordinator or the department. You see, it's probably too late at this stage because the places might have been allocated, but go anyway and do it now.
I thought you could change them within the first 2 weeks of the semester or first 2 weeks of classes.
I'm sure it probably depends on, is there a space? And the second thing is, do you have the academic background? Are you going from one thing that's completely different to another? So go to the school, they will know. Yeah. So anything else? No?
Thank you.
Okay, this is one more question, sorry.
How do we find out who our students coordinator is?
So
No.
he didn't.
No.
What is he studying?
History.
History. So if he just goes, is there a name on the history course? Does he know the? Okay, so let's just have a look. UCC. There's definitely a history department. Is it a full undergrad? Is it full undergrad? So here's the history department. Courses and timetables, undergrad. So I'd probably just call the school. So the number is there and it's just below, or email them history@ucc.ie and just say, look, who is the coordinator for history? Because there will be somebody who's in charge of all of the modules and stuff, and they'll be able to help. It depends on what year he's in, so say first year. Oh, there it is. Diarmuid Scully and Deckmark Klein. So everything is available on the website. Just Google and have a root around.
I have a really, really important question.
Yeah.
Where do I get my college gear?
Oh yes, the merch or the swag. So you can get that from either the visitor centre. So you come out of here and the quad is in front of you, kind of, and just down the end of the kind of stone corridor is the visitor centre. Or go to the student centre. I don't know, are they the same price? I'd shop around. Go to the student centre, which is to the right, and they have a lovely kind of, I think it's called college gear, and just go in and have a look and see. Yeah. All right. So anything else before we wrap up? No? Okay, so thank you so much, and the best of luck, and have fun. Thank you. Bye. No problem. Take a handful, otherwise I'll end up eating it. Just one sec, I'll just need to press stop.